Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 31 Media Podcast. Today's podcast is in collaboration with the Digital Transformation Awards and the AI Summit and Awards. These are two separate B2B events organized by 31 Media. So, if you're interested in attending or exhibiting your tech solutions at any of our events, please follow the link in the description to do so. Today, we have on the podcast Aron Ezra, who is the chairman of the board and co founder of Plan A Technologies. Aaron had previously co founded and served as a CEO to two other successful companies, both of which were acquired in eight-figure deals. He has also written a very insightful article on our DevOps Online platform that explores transformation within organizations from legacy systems to modern platforms. The link to it will also be in the description below. Hello, Aaron. How are you? Is it good
I'm doing
morning
very
where you
well.
are?
Yes, it is morning here in
Yeah,
Las Vegas, and it looks like a beautiful day that's not too hot for a change, which is good.
amazing. That's what we like to hear. Could you give our audience a little more information on your background and what your experience has been with, across these different companies and transformation within these companies?
Sure, yeah. I've been in the technology world for quite a while now. I worked as a consultant for many years, helping different kinds of companies deal with technology related stuff, all sorts of different challenges. And then eventually decided I was going to take the leap and start my own company. And so back in 2007, 2008, I got my first uh, product company started. We scaled that company up, grew it quite a bit. We sold that company. I then did it again with another product company. And today, I am the chairman and co-founder of Plan A Technologies. And Plan A Technologies is an organization that has no products of its own. It is dedicated to helping other companies around the world with dealing as they deal with all sorts of different technology challenges. So sometimes those technology challenges involve building something from scratch. Sometimes those technology challenges involve just getting additional talent to help them with tasks. But many, many, many times those technology challenges involve digital transformation. And I think
Yeah.
when people hear digital transformation, it sort of goes in one ear and out the other for a lot of people. They're like, what the heck is that? Digital transformation really refers to the idea of essentially applying new technologies or existing technologies to your business to make your business better in some way. And so making the business processes easier, making your product fancier, cooler, able to do things it was never able to do before, making your workforce more agile, more
Mhm.
efficient, happier. All sorts of different wonderful benefits can come from digital transformation. And that is where we are often asked to play. So we have a lot of different kinds of clients in many different verticals, especially in regulated markets. So financial services, gaming, healthcare, things like that. And these organizations often especially struggle when it comes to digital transformation because there are very specific rules
Mhm.
around how they have to protect data, around how they have to get code approved that make
Mhm.
the process of digital transformation especially cumbersome and difficult. So we always like to rise to a challenge, and so it's a lot of fun to
Yeah.
help these organizations with dealing with that.
Amazing. Like that sounds so inspiring using like all of the experience that you've gathered to now help other companies also achieve the same. From your experience with dealing multiple organizations up until now, what do you think is the reason why majority of the companies they wait until they're in trouble to, address major legacy tech issues?
That's a great question. And I think part of it, it's a mix of answers. Part of it is just the human nature of procrastinating and not doing the junk that you don't really like to do
Hmm.
very much. So a lot of times, people just put off digital transformation because they don't feel like it right now, and it's not the shiny new thing necessarily. But I think there's a deeper problem at work, which is essentially that most companies today think in much shorter terms.
Hmm.
And if you look at the public company markets, those companies, for the most part, need to think about hitting next quarter revenue numbers. And if you think about average turnover for most companies, many executives, even those who take jobs, are like, look, I might stick around here for a year or two, maybe three if they're lucky.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you have this very um, sort of deep culture of short-term thinking. Now, what does
Mm,
that mean for your question? What that means for your question is that many times when presented with the option of, say, adding a cool new feature to a product or throwing additional marketing dollars behind an existing product versus
mm,
the hard work of actually improving the infrastructure that was built 20 years ago, which, maybe it's being held together by virtual duct tape, but it seems to be holding on. Nobody's going to necessarily see those improvements. It's a lot easier for that average executive to think, well, shoot, I could make all of these announcements about these cool new features that are going to help me sell more widgets. Or I
mm,
could take all those dollars and put it into improving the infrastructure. I think I'm going to go with the widgets. That sounds a
yeah.
little bit cooler. That's something that's going to look better on my resume. And it's
Mm,
something that people can actually see and touch and feel. Whereas so many of the kind of necessary improvements and modernizations that need to happen are not things that you see and touch. They're things that keep the whole house from crashing down on you. And
yeah.
so it's a lot easier to wait very often and kind of kick the can down the road and hope that somebody else is going to deal with it later. The other
Mm,
thing that I want to add in here that goes to that average executive is that there's a lot at stake when you do a modernization. Uh, and so if it goes wrong, there are often very big dollar amounts or pound amounts associated with this. And so somebody feels like they could lose their job. And so it's a lot easier to just say, hey, I didn't make that change on my watch. So nobody ends up pushing for it. And then all of a sudden, the infrastructure is so weak and so poor that, you get hacked, you start falling behind, and all sorts of really, really bad things can happen.
yeah. I mean, there is like obviously a lot of risk associated to this as well, but in your experience, like have you come across any common examples where you saw like certain technologies have been neglected or overlooked by the companies?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of common sort of kick the can down the road for somebody else problems. Some of the
Mm,
technologies that are often postponed are, and we work on a ton of these. So we often see companies that are still using outdated programming languages or platforms that are no longer supported by their original creator. By the way,
mm,
if the original designer of that technology no longer supports it or likes it, you probably shouldn't either. We often see, problems with libraries that have been outdated or security vulnerabilities that have not been patched. So those are, critical issues that can lead to,
mm,
again, major cybersecurity issues and data theft and all sorts of things like that. Um, we frequently see companies that are just nervous about it. So, you'll often have some percentage of the companies who like to be the first movers and then the fast
mm,
followers, and then a pretty sizable chunk of leaders who are just afraid to kind of get in there. And so they don't necessarily have giant vulnerabilities, but they're way, way, way behind their peers when it comes to their technology capabilities, which can be
mm,
a major competitive disadvantage in the market. So, I think there are a lot of these things. Cloud, for instance, is another one that many people are falling behind on. Obviously, today everyone's talking about AI, but a lot of people are not are kind of hesitant to get too far into it.
yeah,
And so, there are some people who are way, way, way further than their competitors in that area too. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different places where people can easily just neglect and sit on their hands and kind of wait for later. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think when it comes to artificial intelligence as well, of course, it's not a buzzword anymore. A lot of people are using that in their projects, but
sure.
there are a lot of companies and people who are quite scared of the word itself.
Yeah.
and they don't know
Yeah.
where to start. And which brings me to my next question. Like, if you were overseeing one of these platforms and it needed updating, what do you think would be the best place to start?
I think there are way too many companies who just start by saying, all right, let's figure out what's going on. Let's see what we can see.
Yeah.
That's a little bit like going to a surgeon if you have a stomach ache and the surgeon says, all right, well, let's just cut you open and see what's up. You need to start with an audit. You need to start with a technical checkup. This is the equivalent of like a medical checkup where every few years at a minimum, it's critical for an organization to really do an unbiased review of what's going on. Where is the technology strong? Where are you missing opportunities? What needs to change? What's possible out there?
Mm,
Most organizations don't even think about doing this. Or if they do it, they'll maybe have somebody on their IT team do it. And that's sort of okay, but it's so much more effective to have a third party company. Plan A is one of many, many, many companies that does this, but a third party company that actually does a very, very comprehensive review of how is the code structured, what needs to be updated. Do you have updated documentation on everything? How are all of the different technologies interconnected? Where are the new opportunities to scale faster or improve efficiency, improve maintainability and flexibility and security and all of those other items?
yeah.
Most organizations just forget about it. But by doing that every couple of years, you're able to not only see some very serious flaws, usually in your own infrastructure and your own tech stacks across the organization, but also get some really cool feedback about all the very, very cool new tech that's constantly being invented. This is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and fastest changing industries in the world. And so it's really important to make sure that the tech that you've implemented 5 or 10 or 15 years ago is probably not the best thing to do what you need it to do today.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so you want to stay on the abreast of the cutting edge of what's available and what's potentially possible. So that's
Yeah.
the best place to start. It's not super expensive. You can get it done in like usually a month or two. And then you get these really wonderful reports. We usually put together 50, 100-page reports of, all of the different opportunities for improvement and along with some of the things that the company's doing really well and that they don't need to improve necessarily.
Amazing. Yeah, like I can see like two things standing out to me, having like a proper structure and a regular cadence to, continue doing the audit and the modernization process. And like we've covered like why it's important to do this, but could you highlight for our audience what certain pros and cons might be for doing modernization work in, like in-house versus actually going to, let's say, an outside firm or outsourcing it?
Yeah. I think I think if you're going to do some kind of modernization work, the big pro of using people in-house is that they're really familiar with the technology. They know what works well, they know what doesn't work well,
Yeah.
and they're often the users of that technology on a day-to-day basis. And so you're at an advantage right out of the gate because people have a lot of good opinions and can get a lot of great information together. But in general, and I know I sound biased because I run a firm that does this,
Yeah.
but even before I did Planet Technologies, this is how I
Hmm.
thought. In general, it's better to get a third party, unbiased group who does this on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
Um, Most organizations, if they're working on this sort of thing, they maybe have some people in house who have done big modernization efforts, 3, 4, 5 times in their career. I have people at Plan A Technologies who have done 70 or 80 of these things. And so when you've gone through it that many times, you just have a much better perspective on where a lot of the normal pitfalls are, a
Hmm.
lot of the traditional mistakes that many different companies have made across multiple different industries. A third party also doesn't have a lot of the biases that the in-house users might have, where maybe one of the people making a decision is like, well, I kind of like this thing a little bit more. I never bothered to learn that new part, so I'm not going to recommend that. That goes out the window when you have a third party that's just looking at, all right, what is the actual best thing for this organization? The
Hmm.
truth is that in an ideal world, it's a hybrid. It's a mix of
Yeah.
both. So you have great input from an outside firm or firms, and then great input from your team members as well. And everyone is working in unison to contribute their perspectives, their ideas, and that, ideally what happens is you have this kind of assessment report that comes out of that audit that basically outlines different options for the organization's leaders to make as they kind of think about how to do the modernization and tackle
Yeah.
essentially what to do first and that prioritization work.
Okay, amazing. And I have like one last question for you.
Sure.
We do know like obviously any sort of change does bring a lot of resistance in every single organization. And again, it'll be like a huge headache for companies to, take on like modernization work and the entire process of it. But could you outline like what certain benefits would be, in your opinion, for companies to actually doing this?
I think there are a lot of, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things that are scary for them. Maybe their job is at risk, it's really expensive. Are people going to necessarily appreciate all the work that goes in?
Hmm.
But the big benefits far outweigh those downsides.
Yeah.
You can essentially, by doing significant real modernization, first of all, it dramatically reduces the chances that you're going to get hacked.
Hmm.
So just from when you look at like the penalties from a GDPR, HIPAA, all these different laws around privacy data being stolen, that alone can completely destroy an organization. Not to mention the fact that, it makes the hotel unable to complete bookings like we saw with the MGM hack. It makes hospitals unable to take care of patients. I mean, it just has horrible implications if you don't do this kind of modernization work and protect yourselves. But then the other big benefits that come from doing real modernization are that you can essentially make your organization a better place to work and a more competitive company in the world. And so you get better products. You make your staff, you make your staff's jobs easier. You make them happier when you take out a lot of the stuff that they don't enjoy. You make it a lot more efficient and effective for people to do their jobs and focus on what they like versus having to do a whole lot of processes that are outdated or annoying or whatever they're having to do, whether that
Hmm.
digital transformation is coming in the form of educating people more effectively, allowing them to file their expense reports better, allowing marketers to send out better marketing, allowing factory workers to be able to focus on the things that they want to do rather than the things that they don't want to do. I mean, it just has massive, massive implications for making the organization a
Yeah.
better entity across virtually every different KPI. So, the promise is great, and as long as you sort of take it in baby steps and
Hmm.
do implementation after implementation and don't try to do too much all at once, the impacts are pretty remarkable.
Amazing. Yeah, those are like definitely pointers that companies can, benefit with. And thank you so much for all of your insightful answers. I can't wait for the audience to even read your article, which is even better. So, yeah, the podcast will be embedded into the article. But thank you so much again for being on the 31 Media podcast, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun having the conversation,
Yeah,
and
it
I hope
was.
to speak again.